Thanks, Riv. 2-1 for TDK. Sivir and Ziggs coming up big. We said it. Yeah. We've said it over and over and over again. And so it can't be ignored, right? And so I do want to touch on it again. We've seen now the potential here, even in a game that was a lot more even, right?
Yeah.
Both teams had winning lanes, but the Sivir Ziggs allowed for choosing the initiations they wanted to, and then layering that massive AoE on top that just rolls through teamfights.
I mean, I love offensive teamfight teams. The weakness for them is that if you play a really kitey game, you have to burn ults to get kills, and then in that sort of down space of like 2 minutes, the other team can go do things like, if I Baron bait and I have to burn 2 ults to kill that one guy, I have to go give away map control. That's the weakness of this type of comp, but that's not being abused by the enemy team. So the big ulti-focused teamfight teams are working. And when you look at picks and bans, you see teams are picking red side. Every single game, these teams picked red side. They wanted the counter pick, and we have yet to see the counter pick actually work. Blue is 3-0 in this series. We saw the first pick, Sivir. That was great. You called that one. No ban came through. They first picked it. Great. And then second round, we've got WinterFox going, okay, so Zig's been really good this series. We should pick Sejuani. And who should complement Sejuani for a big offensive team fight? Maokai! Something that, Seraph is never going to play in this series. And it's just why do you do this? Why do you... It clearly is working. The Ziggs is working. They plan to counterpick Kassadin, and yet again, the safer laner who just wants to farm is getting out of lane just fine. Counterpick isn't working in this series, still isn't, and it's just... WinterFox probably should have just picked better, and they probably could have had a chance to win.
Let's go to the top lane. We talked about what Seraph would go to if not the Mundo. He chooses the Gnar, allowed him to have a lot more presence in lane this time around. Zion, thoughts?
Yeah, so I like the Gnar a lot better than the Mundo for Seraph because he can pressure a lot and he can just push up Avalon, and Avalon has gotten bullied a lot in LCS. And I think that TDK is starting to realize, hey, Gnar is a great pick into Maokai, wins lane, scales hard, and can bully hard. And he did have some issues with split pushing too far and not grouping with his team, but as soon as they finally grouped in the mid game, you saw that they were just able to group up, get the picks, and just siege down turrets. And to me, this whole series has been and is going to be won by the picks and bans. Sivir and Ziggs are just so important, and for WinterFox to give both of those picks away to TDK is huge. It's similar to Game 1 where Alex got Corki, a safe poking mid lane, and then Pobolter was an assassin that didn't get fed again. He was Kassadin this time. Last time he was LeBlanc, and it's just not working. They need to go back to Ziggs. They need to go back to those safe farming up mids, and they need to play with that stronger late game because, to me, it's just looking like who has the better late game team comp and who has the better team fight that's coming out on top.
Yeah, I love the point about being, that the series is going to come down to picks and bans, but also, too, when we look at which lanes came out ahead here, we had Seraph coming out on top in the top lane, Alex being up in the mid lane, and then Louis GG being down in the bottom lane.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter so much because he's playing the utility AD carry. And then, as you mentioned, you have that Ziggs who's happy with going even or ahead coming out of that mid lane. And then same thing with Gnar. Now he's a split pushing threat. He has damage. He's got a fair amount of CC and lockdown in these team fights. The right lanes got ahead for TDK.
Yeah.
So now when we look over on WinterFox's side and we say, well, that's great that you're beating Louis GG, but if you're going to give him Sivir, it doesn't matter so much, right? They need to find a way to get them onto the champions that their winning lanes will be more effective when they get to the teamfight phase.
Yeah, and honestly, it comes back to Altec's not able to use this lead very well, is the thing. Right? Game 1 played Kalista, short-range champion, can't crit down the tanks, doesn't do very well. Jinx, 4 games in a row, still banned away. I'm waiting to see a long-range. I would rather see Caitlyn at this point, because at least Altec can sit there and guarantee get auto attacks down. But when you're playing Lucian, you're always afraid of Gnar, you're always afraid of Gragas, heck, you're afraid of Alistar as well. I mean, I was surprised that Sivir did so well in Game 1 for Louis GG way back in the first game of the series, but for some reason that champion's working. But the auto-attack-centric, short-range champions, it's very hard to have optimal teamfight damage come out, and we're just not seeing the gold that Altec's routinely getting do anything. And I don't know if it's him teamfighting improperly. I'd have to watch the game again to see if there are any specific mistakes by him, but he's not getting the damage out to carry this game.
Yeah, we've seen stubbornness, though, too, in the picks and bans so far. Just for as an example, TDK, same 3 bans throughout all 3 games. Now, they've won 2 of them. Great. But they're going back to red side here, Zion, where they did lose. They banned Nunu Heck Jinx. They gave up the Sivir and Ziggs in that game. So, obviously, we're probably expecting that to change, right? We've said it and it hasn't, so I don't know if they'll listen this time around, but I would hope that they do.
I definitely think they're going to realize the importance of Sivir and Ziggs, and if they don't ban Sivir, it's probably because they're going to be like, okay, we're going to take like Ziggs and Sejuani to like compensate for them having Sivir, so we have that huge AoE presence. Or they're going to ban out Sivir and not expect the Ziggs first pick so that they can take Ziggs later on.
All right, well, they've got a few more minutes to get their plans locked down. TDK are just 1 Smash Nexus away from unseating WinterFox and claiming a spot in the North American LCS. Stay with us for Game 4, coming up soon.